Here's some examples of the equipment used during the Revolutionary War. This is an example of a musket that a soldier might use in battle. And this is an example of a cannon that either side could be using in battle. You will see lots of live examples of them when you watch The Patriot. So the uniforms are really interesting. You need to know what each side looks like so that when you're watching the movie and when we're discussing things, you can figure out who is who. So the top man in the screen, that's an example of what the Continental Army wore during the Revolutionary War. So he's got the blue coat with the red lining and the hat and the white pants. And then he's got the book bag with all the supplies. He's got his musket, his bayonet, everything he needs. The other uniform below is an example of what the militia would have worn. Remember, the militia is volunteer army. They're not trained like the regular army, so many times they would wear just whatever they would wear on a normal basis in battle. What you see here is an example of a uniform that a British officer might wear. So the red coat with the blue lining, then the muskets, the bayonets, the white pants, and the big hat. Keeping in mind, remember all the nicknames that the British were called during Road to the Revolution: lobster backs, bloody backs. The uniforms are going to be part of their demise during this Revolutionary War. What I'd like you to do now is compare and contrast each side's uniform. So what are the similarities and what are the differences? And you can keep an eye on the screen and press pause on this video so that you can go ahead and take a look at it. All right, let's start. We are going to be looking at each side of the colonies and what is going on. So first, let's start in the north. So George Washington has the Continental Army in the north. And he's trying to keep them together, but the British take both New York City and Philadelphia. Now, this is a huge blow to us because these are two of our major cities here in the States. Now, although many Americans are showing bravery, they are running short on supplies for the army. On top of that, the size of the Continental Army was dwindling or getting smaller. So George Washington goes to the Continental Congress, remember the governing body that's representing the states right now, and he pleads with them and asks them for more troops. In fact, he goes a step further and he asks them to enlist African Americans. Now, at first they said no, but as the need for soldiers grew, states began enlisting African Americans, and by war's end, almost every single state except for South Carolina had African Americans fighting with their armies. This is also, this painting is also of George Washington and is a very famous painting of, it's called Washington Crossing the Delaware. It's one of our favorite paintings, and it's showing General George Washington and the Continental Army crossing the Delaware River. Now, the background, the backstory on this painting is actually quite interesting. So during the Revolutionary War, each side would play by gentlemen's warfare and rules, and one of those rules was to not engage in battle on holidays such as Christmas, that each side would take a break. In fact, sometimes they would even take a break from battle if it were too cold outside. So obviously it's December 25th, it's 1776, and in gentlemen's warfare normally there would be an assumption that both sides would be taking a break from battle. But George Washington didn't see it that way. He looked at it as an opportunity to take the British mercenaries that were across the river from his sleeping troops by surprise. So on one side of the Delaware River, you have Continental Army, and on the other side, you have these sleeping British mercenaries. So what he does is he puts all of his troops inside of these boats in the middle of the night, and he crosses the Delaware River bravely, and they surprise the Hessians in the morning, and they take 900 of them prisoners. We want you guys to take a look at this painting even further because, again, it is a very famous painting, and we want you to analyze it, and we want you to notice the people and the use of colors and whether or not this portrait is realistic, and what does George Washington's posture say about him, and why is the flag shown? Go ahead and take a moment now and fill this into your notes. Now, the next thing that happens is the Battle of Saratoga. Now, the Battle of Saratoga, you may want to star in your notes because it's known as the turning point of the war. It's October 17th, 1777, and the tide actually turns in favor of the Patriots. The Patriots end up surrounding the British Army, and the British Army surrenders 5,700 troops. Now, the reason why the Battle of Saratoga is so significant in our history and so significant in the Revolutionary War is because this is the victory that convinces France to support and ally with America. So go ahead and based on this information, I want you guys to write into your notes, why will the Battle of Saratoga be considered the turning point of the war? Next, the winter at Valley Forge becomes famous. It's 1777 to 1778, and Washington and his troops are spending a terrible winter of suffering. There's a lot going on. So they're up north. There's not enough clothes. There's not enough blankets or food. There's disease rampant because it's not sanitary, and many men actually go as far as deserting, or and some even die. Deserting means when you leave without permission, and that's that's a big deal. That's against the rules in military. You can get in a lot of trouble for it, but some of them do. Some of them say, "Hey, I'm just going to go home and take care of my family, and I can't live like this." So they desert. Now, some of those deserters are going to return in the spring, and they will face punishment because George Washington is a disciplined man, and he wants to make sure his army is disciplined. Now, meanwhile, only 20 miles away, while they are going through this winter at Valley Forge, the British are spending their winter in comfort and have all of the amenities that they need. If you take a look at this painting on the right, it shows Marquis de Lafayette. Remember the Frenchman, one of the faces of the Revolutionary War. He's good friends with George Washington, and it's showing him arriving to train the Continental Army.